Hello, and welcome to the Trail Manners Podcast. I'm your host, Eric Manning, coming to you from the beautiful trails in Ogden, Utah, but connecting you to wherever trail, ultra, and mountain running takes us. We'll bring trail running to life with amazing athletes, discuss the latest topics, epic journeys, and get you stoked for your next trail adventure. We're sharing the moments that make life special, because even a rough day on the trail beats a good day indoors, and nothing beats time spent with good friends and great stories. Catch us here weekly for your dose of dirt, vert, and good vibes. So now it's time to top off your water, grab some cheese curds, and join us for this week's podcast, where we take you deep into the heart of our sport. It's go time. Hello and welcome to episode number 333 of the Trail Manners Podcast. The Trail Manners Podcast is produced for your enjoyment, and show notes are found at trailmanners.com. Come back often, and please feel free to add the podcast to your favorite RSS feed or iTunes. You can also follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Trail Manners, and don't forget to subscribe, review, and rate us on iTunes. Trail Manners would really appreciate any donations via our website at trailmanners.com, and please remember to share us with your friends. All links are in the show notes. Now let's get after it. All right, welcome back to another episode of the Trail Manners Podcast. I'm your host, Eric W. Manning. Launch date, podcast is 10/22/24. That's October 22nd, 2024. Hope you heard our last episode, 332, with Sarah Manning, talking about her I'm Tough 100 experience a few weeks back. Fun podcast, always great to start the season off. We'll do some 100-milers, and then we'll really get into a few more things. So this next episode, 333, is a special one. This is going to be a great episode. I hope you're all tuned in. Share it with your friends. We've got a Bear 100 finisher, and even our next episode that launches next week, we'll have another Bear 100 finisher that I was fortunate enough to pace a little bit. But right now, I'm going to introduce you to our next guest, 17 years old, from Syracuse High School here in Utah. Homecoming king just a few weeks ago, right before, and a Bear 100 finisher. It is an absolute pleasure to bring Adam Wolf behind the mic. Adam, how you doing?
Doing great. Thanks for having me here.
I'm excited. As I mentioned, 17. I mean, we're going to tackle this question a lot.
Yeah.
So I hope you're ready to get grilled here. Congrats. 100-mile finish at 17 years old. My brain can't even comprehend that.
Yeah.
So thanks for taking the time to get on with us.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to be here. It's awesome.
Well,
you got a nice setup.
Thanks. I appreciate that. It wasn't your first race, so I pulled up just on Ultra Sign Up, so there's probably, I know there's tons you've done, but your Ultra Sign Up goes back to 2017 when you were 10 years old.
Yeah. I actually started here with you guys, actually.
Yeah, the Nordic Valley 7K that Joel and myself put on through Trail Manners, and you ran it 2017 and 2018.
Yeah, in 2018 I got the free entry through the podcast through you guys.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So that was pretty cool to see where that happened, but you've also, at 16 years old, you ran the Salt Flats 50 at age 16 in 2024, right?
Yep, earlier this year.
Yeah, and 6th overall.
Yeah, that was a big surprise.
In 9:29, and then in August of this year, you ran the White Pine 50 in 13, and then, of course, here we are about ready to tackle what you've already done, the Bear 100, 32:25. Now, my first 100-mile race, I was much older than 17, but we won't talk about it. I was in 30, it was Wasatch. It was like 34, almost 35 hours. So I'm sitting here looking at your Bear 100 at 17 at 32 hours, and I'm like,
yeah.
All right, we're gonna figure this out. So
well, I've got youth on my side, but
that you do, and hopefully all the good knees and hips and all the stuff to go along.
They're all there.
So how did you get into trail running? Let's start there. How did you get into trail running?
I got into trail running through my mom, actually. I started pacing her in 2017, like you said. That's the first race that I did, which was through you guys. But so I've been pacing my mom for years. I think I paced her 4 times because I paced her in 2017, 18, then was going to in 2019, but she had to DNF. And then she didn't do it in 2020 or 2021. and then we convinced her to do it in 2022.
I like that. We convinced her to do it.
I'm pretty sure she got like the final ticket as well. Like it was pretty lucky.
And it was a bear again? Or?
It was the bear
yeah.
as well.
Yeah, your mom's quite an accomplished trail runner herself.
Yeah. And it's pretty cool because I started out pacing her the final 10 miles of the bear, ranger dip to the finish, and then it built on each year. So went from 10 miles to 15, and then a couple years off, and then 28 miles, did 42 last year, and here we are for the full thing.
It's a natural progression, right?
Natural progression.
So when did you start? I mean, again, you're 17, so I'm trying to wrap my head around this still. It's amazing because I actually remember you at 10 years old.
Yeah, I remember the Nordic Valley 7K very clearly.
Yeah.
Just
snow and fun.
Snow and fun and a bunch of fun with you guys.
When did you decide that you wanted to do a 100-mile race?
So I decided that last year after I paced Mom the 42 miles, and it took a little bit of realization because the 42 miles, I mean, it was so in 2022 and 2023, I paced her the night section.
Okay.
So it was, in 2022, I paced her from Tony Grove to the lodge, and then I paced her from Right Hand Fork to the lodge. So it was all throughout the night. A little bit of day running it in 2023, but it was mainly the night. So the 2023 pacing that I did, like at the end of it, I'm like, okay, I'm starting to feel it. And I was really starting to feel it, but everybody's like, holy cow, I was 16 at the time. They're like, holy cow, you're 16, you're out here pacing? That's nuts. My 16-year-old's on the couch right now. And I've gotten a lot of comments like that, and it's pretty funny.
Imagine.
But the thing that really kind of brought me to realization that I could do it is a couple people, Chris Jones, we met him last year. He also ran it this year. Another really good trail runner. So he's like, oh, are we going to see it at the start line this year? Next year in 2024? And I'm like, oh, I don't know. And at first I kind of played it off as a joke because I'm like, oh man, I'm 16. And another person who kind of also added the realization is my friend, or my dad's friend, Derek. We call him D-Mac. I'm not sure why. It's just a nickname, but
it's just what you call him.
Yeah, so he's my dad's friend from work. My dad's an airline pilot, so he's from Atlanta. So D-Mac, he flew all the way over here to watch the race in 2022 because he's like, oh, that's crazy. Can't believe that your mom actually runs that. And it's fun for him because he sees us pacing.
Sure.
And then he came back in 2023 because it was so awesome. And he was going to come back for the Salt Flats 50 when he realized I was going to do it, but he had some medical stuff pop up so he couldn't fly. But he came for the White Pine 50, so that was pretty fun having him there.
That's awesome.
And then, of course, he came for the 2024 Bear 100.
The big one.
The big one.
That's awesome. So you decided, I mean, it had to be within the last year.
Yeah,
right?
I decided in October, I'm like, well, let's sign me up. Let's see what I can do. Let's push my limits.
Well, I like it too because, again, your mom, she's been around doing races for a long time. Absolutely. Your whole family knows what it takes to be a part of this. And I actually watched you through Strava. We communicated a little bit throughout the year. It looked like you were really smart with your training and getting prepared for the bear at a young age. So what did that look like for you? Because, again, you're 17, you're still going to high school. You're on the cross-country team, so you're running cross-country, which is a lot different than
distance, getting the best of both worlds.
Yeah, right. So what was your training like, and when did you officially start training for the bear?
So in the spring, I was doing track as well. That was a bunch of speed work.
Sure.
We still did quite a bit of distance for track because I did the 1 and 2 mile.
Okay.
And it's a huge variety, so it really depends who you're with. I'm not a sprinter by any means. Like, I don't have speed. I eventually got some speed, but distance is my game, not speed.
Yeah.
So on the weekdays, we usually did speed work 2 or 3 times a week. And then the other days we were doing longer distance, and I'd usually do longer distance than everybody else. If they were doing 4 or 5 miles, I'd probably do 6 or 7 some days, just a little bit extra. And then the weekends is when it really kicked in, when I started to train, and I'd hit the trails with Mom and do what we could here and there. And summer is when the real training began because I was out of school for couple months. We could really hit the trails hard.
Yeah.
And we had some summer cross country practice. So, and that was like 8 in the morning most days. Or no, sorry, not 8 in the morning. It was earlier than that. It was probably like 7 because it's hot outside.
Sure.
But so we still had some speed work, just trying to stay on top of it for the cross country season. But I shouldn't say this, but the distance was a little more of a focus than the speed.
Sure.
Because I already had some good speed, which I lost a little bit of it when the summer came because
Doing more miles.
while you're trying to keep that same pace in the heat.
Sure.
Instead of
Oh,
it
yeah.
being 40 degrees outside, it's 82 now.
A little warmer.
So a little warmer, but eventually you get used to it. So, yeah, it just mainly just started in the summer when we were able to get some good miles in.
Well, and then you did Salt Flats, and then you turned. So White Pine was in August. So let me ask you that. You did a 50-miler, White Pine, 13 hours and change. When you finished White Pine, did you think to yourself, oh, I got the bear? Or was there some stuff going, holy cow, I got a 50
So
more
I felt
miles?
really good. That day it was hot, and I've been used to the heat from cross country because in the summer we were doing sprints in 93-degree weather. It was nice and toasty outside, so I had some good heat endurance.
Okay.
My mom, on the other hand, she didn't have the same heat training that I had, so the heat was pretty rough on her for White Pine, and she said, because we've ran the 50-milers together, well, Salt Flats, she cut me loose at mile 23 so I could go and beat the youngest record.
Nice. And did
which
you do that?
I got it by 8 minutes.
Nice.
I tied the youngest age record. It was so I was 16 and there was a 16-year-old that ran it back in 2015.
Okay.
But I beat that record by 8 minutes.
Okay. Nice.
So we ran both 50s together, and yeah. So White Pine, it was warm and then it rained on us. It didn't soak the trails. It was just a sprinkle for a little bit, and then it started to come down a little bit more. When it came down a little more, we're like, oh crap, it's going to get muddy and all that.
Yeah.
And surprisingly, it didn't get as muddy as I thought it would.
Okay.
And it was just enough to take the dust off the trails,
Sure.
just kind of make things, I don't know.
Not nearly as
Not
moon
nearly as-
dusty, getting your face and your nose.
It was a mix between just, I mean, trails are terrible when they're rainy, but it wasn't a swamp, but it wasn't a slip and slide.
yeah, just super, because it does get up there.
It was wet,
slippery.
like there was some mud, but it wasn't horrible.
Nice.
And the rain stopped and the trails dried out pretty quick actually, and it wasn't a huge amount of rain, but it was enough to bring out the rain flies for an hour or so. And when we got to the finish, I was feeling great. I was on top of the world.
Wow, I bet
And
you would be.
that day, like if that would have been the Bear 100, I would have kept on going. My mom, on the other hand, she's like, man, if this was the Bear 100, I don't know if I would have been able to keep on going.
Well, and then the White Pine course, for people that aren't aware that are listening, White Pine is there. It's on the Bear course.
Yeah.
It's in the same area. There's some similar stuff there. So that's actually a really good prep, if you will, to kind of gauge yourself a little bit on the course.
Yeah, and for a prep race, just in preparation for the Bear 100, I highly recommend I can't talk today, but I highly recommend White Pine. It's a great race. You get the distance, you get some elevation, just in preparation for the Bear. It's a really great race.
Yeah. And so you finished. You at that point too. You were like, I'm ready.
Yeah.
I'm ready for the Bear. So then it was a time thing, because I watched you kind of doing some countdown on Instagram. You
Yeah.
could see your excitement. And
Yeah, we had about 5 weeks after White Pine, so it was coming up really fast.
yeah, I mean, it's not a lot more. So, and then the Bear 100, again, you started that with your mom. You
Yeah.
both started the Bear 100. So that was my question. So I crewed and paced that race. At one point, your mom didn't feel well.
Yeah.
So how did that go? Because you probably had planned on running. Did
Yeah.
you have pacers lined up at any point before that day?
Yeah, so we did have pacers lined up.
Okay.
It changed a little bit.
Okay.
So she started to not, because it was a hot bear.
Yep.
It's
Took a lot of people out.
yeah, it did. I think it was 95 people total.
Yeah.
Which is a pretty good amount of the race considering there's only 350. So
Yeah, it's a big
decent sized
percent.
chunk of the race. I'm pretty sure it was one of the hottest years for the bear. Like it was pretty high up there.
Yeah.
And once again, mom's not great with the heat. Yeah. So I told her to, because I was still doing cross country workouts, so I wasn't getting a whole lot of workouts in with her. We went out on the weekends when we could, when I'm not having a cross country meet. But I told her to start getting some heat training, just go on a 3 to 4 mile run when it's 80 degrees or so outside, get some good heat work in. And it paid off. I saw that it really helped her quite a bit, but it just wasn't enough. So about mile 37, her stomach turned on her. She threw up at mile 37. And at that point, because you're only a third of the way through the race, at that point, I'm like, oh, I hope this goes well. And we were, so let's see, I guess it was the climb before Tony Grove. That climb has about 3,000 feet, I think.
That's a big one.
And it was still hot outside.
Yep. And
at that point, it's almost the halfway mark. So we're approaching Tony, and my watch is about to hit 50 miles, and I wanted to make a comment saying like, "Oh, sweet, we're halfway there. Everything out from here is a PR for me."
Oh yeah, it's true.
For mileage and distance, or sorry, mileage and elevation. So I'm like, "Oh, sweet, everything's a PR out for me." But I knew that she wasn't doing well. We were taking that climb at like a 26, 27 minute mile.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'm gonna keep this to myself, because I knew if she were to hear that, she'd say, "Oh, I'm done."
Yeah.
And when we got up to Tony, she said to my dad, she's like, "Hey, I need a pep talk." And that's when I'm like, oh crap, this isn't going to go well. So we stayed at Tony for about 42 minutes, and ultimately she did end up dropping. And she told me the reasons afterwards. She didn't want to slow me down and prevent me, because she would have taken all 36 hours.
Yeah.
She could have toughed it out and been on the
mom's
medication, but it would have taken her the 36 hours, and she just wanted to see what I could do. So she ended up dropping. And so my dad, like you said, we had pacers lined up. So my dad was going to hop in regardless of what happened. So he paced me from Tony to the lodge.
Okay.
So it was like 24 miles for him.
Yep.
And then, well, we were originally thinking that we could have dad, because we were going to have an area where we didn't have a pacer, because the idea was to have mom I wouldn't say pace me, but the idea was to finish the race with her, because it's, well, the race that we started on. It's the first ultra that I paced her on.
Yeah.
It's the only ultras I've paced her on. It's just kind of what started all this.
Yeah.
So, so we didn't have a pacer lined up. It was from 75 to 85. So dad thought about pacing from 75 to 85, but mom was feeling good. She got some rest. So she went from a racer to a pacer. Quite the downgrade, if you ask me. But she said she loved it. She's like, "Man, this is so much better than racing. Like
less stress and pressure for sure."
And she was feeling good, even though she'd already done 50 miles.
Yeah.
So she paced from 75 to 85, feeling great.
Wow.
And we already had a pacer lined up for 85 to Ranger.
Okay.
So to like
91. Yeah.
So it was my cross country coach, actually.
Oh, right on.
So my JV cross country coach. So he came up. Coach hat. So he ended up pacing me from 85 to the finish.
Wow.
Because we didn't think they'd like Sadie coming out with me, because 2 minors on the course. So, and I would have been totally fine with it, because I'm like, well, you can see the finish, but we just thought it'd be better to have an adult. So we ended up having coach do an extra 9 miles or so, and he loved it. Like, this is a new experience for him. He did the St. George Marathon, a couple of days ago. And he's like, "Man, this is so cool. Just the scenery and that." Like, he's seeing, and it's funny because we got him a shirt and he wore it to cross country practice on Monday.
That's awesome.
And everybody's like, "Guys, is Adam converting him?" Like,
he sounds like it is.
It's just kind of funny. And I made that joke prior to it, and then he wore the shirt, and then everybody's like, "Oh man, I think Adam's converting him. Like, something's up." But yeah, it was really cool having him out there.
That's awesome. So what about like during the race? I mean, you're a pretty happy dude to begin with.
Yeah.
Was there any low points for you? Like, did you have some points, whether it was like your stomach or just tired or physical? Was there any low points for you?
So my stomach is made of steel at this point. I'm pretty much convinced that, like, the Salt Flats 50 that I did, I was eating candy the whole time.
You're making all the
I'm not
listeners
even
upset
kidding.
right now.
I know. I'm sorry, guys. Like, I still had some nutritional food in that. Like, I was still having, like, I still had sandwiches and some fruit and just all that stuff. Like, they had some stuff out there, but
The good old days of being young.
but I gotta say, those Easter jelly beans, like, I was feeling off those. And I hate to say that, especially to everybody who's listening, but I'm like, man,
there's a
those
lot of
calories, like, those were good. But so White Pine, so for the Salt Flats, I was just kind of using that as a test trial. I'm like, okay, how good is my stomach? Let's see what I can do. And then White Pine, I was eating a little better because I'm like, okay, this is kind of the test trial for the bear. So we ate a lot healthier for White Pine. Still had some candy here and there, but not as much. And yeah, my stomach is just made of steel.
Well, that's a
for the,
bonus.
For the 100-miler. For the bear, like, I was eating whatever I wanted. We had sandwiches, we had quesadillas, grilled cheese, we had fruit, we had chips, obviously a little candy.
Candy. Yeah, you got to sprinkle the candy in.
13,000 calories. Like, you got to regain a little bit of that. And yeah, my stomach's just made of steel. It doesn't bother me at all.
So no low points with your stomach.
So no low points with my stomach. As far as low points go, I'd say probably mentally. So I told my mom and dad this before. I said, hey, I'm not dropping. The only thing that would make me drop is if I tear something or break something. Like, I'm not quitting. So mentally, I was really good. And when mom dropped, that kind of stung a little bit for a few miles because I'm like, oh, we were going to finish this together. This was the goal. Like, time wasn't a huge factor. We were aiming for sub 30, which we were on pace for up until we were on the Tony climb.
Yeah.
And then things slowed down when we stayed at Tony for so long. But yeah, time wasn't the goal. It was finishing together. So that kind of stung for a little bit, but I knew ultimately it wasn't going to affect my mentality because I knew what I was going to do. And all my training, it wasn't going to pay off for nothing. So
Sure. Is that kind of how you take life at 17? Do you just think if you set your mind to something, you're going to take care of it?
And it's something that a lot of people are losing these days, especially people my age. Just they don't have the discipline or the dedication that it takes. I mean, even for simple things, I see some of my friends just who have low grades in their classes, and I'm like, come on, guys, like
just effort.
If
right?
I can run 100 miles, you can have a B in math at least. Like, you can scrape off at least a B. Just you can put in the time and the effort to get a certain grade or just achieve something.
Yeah, I think that's 100% truth, and I can see the same things in that. So low points, you were pretty good then.
Yeah, I was really good
Nice.
throughout the whole race as far as low points go.
And physically, you felt good. Your legs, everything else. I mean, obviously, 100 miles is still tiring.
Honestly,
but
yeah, it's tiring.
But you felt pretty good though.
But it felt really good towards the end. My calves were definitely shot. Like, quads were definitely feeling it. But otherwise, I was feeling great. When I came into the finish, like
you were flying.
I tried.
Let me just say that.
Yeah.
I saw you coming down. I cheered you on. We were in the finish shoot, but you were for 100-mile race. You were moving.
Yeah. And so our average throughout the race, well, I guess I should say my average because mom dropped, but like the average of the race, it was like a 18, 30-minute mile, something like that.
Okay.
And I came into the finish. I tried to run some of the downhill from the Ranger climb, but I'm like, oh, there's no way my feet are going to get that kind of clearance over those rocks because it was really rocky.
Yeah, that's like 3,000 feet of drop in the last 6 miles, 7 miles maybe.
It's steep.
Yep.
And for how rocky it was, because I haven't done that specific point in 5 years or so.
Yeah.
So like I knew what it looked like, but I kind of forgot about the rocks. So I'm like, ooh, I don't want to trip or anything.
Yeah.
And I should have run throughout the night a little bit to shave off some time as well. But once again, the rocks just didn't know what kind of clearance I had. I ended up speed walking quite a bit.
Yeah.
And just power hike, 15, 16-minute mile. Like, I was doing really good. So I kind of kept to that strategy going downhill. And then once I got to the main road, I handed Coach my phone because he didn't have his phone on him. I'm like, okay, go to the finish, record me, just kind of run in with me. And we had several people filming, but I just wanted somebody running.
Yeah.
Because he was pacing me. So we came across Mom and Sadie at the beginning of the long stretch on that road where you go straight and then you turn left and then keep on going straight, and then it's pretty much the finish. You turn into the preserve, whatever the finish was at.
Yep.
And I was flying. Like, I started out with coach at like a 10-minute mile, and I'm like, oh, this is kind of quick. And I just kept on increasing the speed. And for the final mile and a half, I was at like a 9:10 pace.
Wow.
Like, it was wild. For the 100th mile, like that kind of a pace you don't see.
No. So what was it like when you crossed the finish line? Like, what was going through your head?
Really, I was just thinking about all that I'd done to get up to that point. I was thinking about all the years that I'd paced Mom, because we always cross with her as a tradition.
Yeah.
So I was really just thinking about all of that and wishing that she was still in the race, but she was right behind me. Well, I guess they stopped at the corner to video and all that.
Yeah.
But I was just really thinking about all the hard work and just the effort and the dedication that it took to get there.
That'd feel pretty good, though. I
It really
imagine.
did.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty remarkable, to be honest. Was there any point in the race, because mental, as you mentioned before, is such a key component, was there any point in the race where it crossed your mind that maybe you weren't going to finish?
Absolutely not.
Not?
Like,
Nice.
I was so set on this goal. I'm like, I'm going to finish, like, unless if I tear something or break something.
Injury related.
If I was going to be pulled out, it's going to be by medics, not by anybody else. I'd worked so hard for this and nobody was pulling me out.
That's awesome.
Dad actually mentioned, because he's like, oh, if you wear me out, your race is done. And I didn't say anything, but I'm like, you wouldn't dare, especially with the amount of effort that I'd put in. I'm like, yeah, nobody's going to stop me.
So how does that work? Because I don't even know, like, could you be out on the course by yourself, or did you have to have someone with you?
Probably. I mean, we signed the waiver and everything.
Okay, so you're
we
sure
signed
good.
The waiver,
yeah, you're
so
good.
We're
You signed
good.
a waiver, they
But
can do whatever they want. Okay.
The thing that, I mean, it was the night. It was still 4 a.m, so
Sure.
that's why Dad's like, I mean, and I get that, him being a parent in that.
Sure.
But with all the work I've been through, I'm like, yeah, you better keep up.
Suck it up, Dad. have a jelly bean.
Yeah. Hey, those jelly beans were good at Salt Flats.
I bet. I had some friends, we've tried different things, and jelly beans is not one of them, but I'm half tempted to give it a shot at some point. So let me ask you this. What are some of the takeaways? And I apologize for saying it, but it is, to me, remarkable, with your age and everything else you have going on in your life, not just how you're 17, but with school. And, there is some stressors with school and grades and, the track. That's totally different training. What are some takeaways when you have looked back now? It's a few weeks since the Bear. What are things you're taking away with you that, I don't know, that you think about?
Probably just as far as takeaways go, just probably what I learned out on the course. Just, you need to work hard. You need to put in the time and the effort. You need to just, I don't know, just...
Well, I think that applies for anybody at any age.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you put the time, you put the effort in. I always like to say that the race is your celebration.
It is.
Right? You've put all the work in. Now it's time to go and just
Do
celebrate
your best.
giving all the time that you put in. Because you did a lot of training too. It seemed like you did like marathons on weekends as your training run, right?
Back in November
Yeah.
of last year, and this is after I signed up for the Bear. I'm like, hey, I kind of want to try something, because I'd seen a couple other people do it, like really crazy people. I'm like, what if I were to do a marathon each weekend? So I tried that. My friends were nuts. They're like, hey, you want to hang out? I'm like, hang on, I'm partway through a marathon right now. And
I'm only at mile 13.
only
Hold
mile
on.
13, hang on. So yeah, in November, I ran a marathon almost every weekend. The 4th weekend, I only got about halfway through. It was just too cold. My chin was freezing. And the cold doesn't get to me, but those winter winds, just the start of winter, I'm like, oof, I'm not ready. So, but I did put in a lot of miles that month, and just that was the point where I'm like, okay, I need to get some good distance in. And there were a few times last year when I got some really good distance in, like the Bear 100, when I paced Mom the 42 miles, that was the furthest I'd gone.
Yeah.
And then prior to that, back in September, our school had this event called March of the Titans.
Oh, that's right. I remember.
Yeah,
you talked about
it was
that.
an all-nighter event. The idea was to have people walk or run all night, and
around the track, football.
everybody
track.
played pickleball not pickleball, 9 square and spike ball on the field. Like, they're just having fun with their friends. And I'm like, man, that looks fun, but I ran all night. Because it was great nighttime endurance.
Yeah.
It was just.
And what did you end up doing? Because it was on a track.
It was on a track.
And you did how many miles?
32.
32 miles for fun through the night.
Yeah, out of school.
Pretty much by yourself.
Yeah.
Right? Because everybody else was like, yeah,
so
we're not going that far.
That's when I was like, okay, let's see what kind of. And I hadn't signed up for the Bear yet. This was beginning of September.
Yeah.
And so I did the 32 then. That was a PR for me as far as mileage goes.
Wow.
And then I did the 42 later that month. And then I signed up for the Bear in October.
Wow.
And then along with the prerequisite, which was the Salt Flats,
Sure.
White Pine. But
Getting you ready to go.
yeah, it's just.
So what do your friends think?
They think I'm crazy.
Do they? Has any of them ever, now that they see you do it, do you think any of them have any, not that they're going to do it, but do you think any of them are thinking about doing something bigger right, than what they're normally doing?
I'm not quite sure. So one of my cross-country friends, this is his arena. He's like, oh, this is so cool. He really wants to do a 50 in a couple years with his brother.
Nice.
And then his ultimate goal is Badwater,
Oof.
135. I'm like, he's like, you want to run it with me one day? I'm like, sorry, man, that's the one race I'm not going to consider. That's absolutely not.
Yep,
so
I'm with you on that.
So he's kind of trending in the same direction. I mean, I think he's a sophomore or a junior right now. He's not a senior, but he's kind of on the same path. I'm just really far ahead. But he does have kind of that interest. He's like, well, that is out there. It's crazy, but it's cool. So we'll see where he goes. But Badwater, that's
it's not.
No
even,
thanks.
We don't say that on the podcast much.
Nope.
It makes me sweat
I don't blame
just
you.
thinking about it. So let me. So there's another side to this, and I'm curious what your thoughts are because you're 17. My youngest is 19. Have people talked to you about? Or your family even about being too young to run a 100-miler. Like, oh, you should probably wait. You're too young. It's not safe or healthy. Have you heard any of that stuff?
No, nobody's really questioned it because when I did the 42 with Mom, I mean, everybody's like, okay, like he's got some potential. Like, what can he do?
Yeah.
So, and I'm best shape of my life right now. So.
You're 17,
I'm 17.
Adam. Come on. You're looking at me over here and you're like, I'm in the best shape of my life eating jelly beans. So, what about future plans for trail races? Do you have anything like in the near future?
As far as the near future, I haven't picked out any specific races yet. I know for a fact that I want to do the Bear 100 next year.
Okay.
So definitely we'll be back for that. I do want to do a few hundreds next year aside from the Bear.
Wow.
Because my recovery was amazing.
I didn't want to hear it.
I was back to cross country practice on Tuesday.
You're like sprinting 3 days later.
No, it was a light jog, but
light jog. Most people 3 days later are pretty much still eating their ice cream out of the pint. So
yeah, but my recovery was great. Like 5 days afterwards, I was back to normal. I was feeling amazing. So with as much energy as I had at the end of the Bear, and like that's a serious physically and mentally challenging course. So
Yeah.
like it's arguably in Utah it's probably the hardest one, and there's some harder ones nearby, but it's a big physical and mental test.
Oh, for sure.
So knowing that, I do know that I could handle those types of races, but I could also recover pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So I do want to do a couple hundreds next year. I'm not sure what they'll be, but I do know that the Bear will be one of them.
Nice. That'll be awesome. Well, I think you're more than qualified for it.
Yeah.
At this point.
And the Bear just has a special place in my heart. Just once again, because it's where I started, pacing Mom, and first 100 I did.
And your family just obviously don't know your family well, but again, being around the scene, I see them quite a bit, and your mom, and a very supportive family. You're really close-knit family. Like that's what it looks like. Is that seem because you guys travel together, your dad flies, it looks like you guys just really enjoy it, and then having them all there, because I was at the finish like I mentioned, and you had an entourage at the finish line. There was you had a lot of people with you at the finish line. There's people that didn't for sure, but I was like, man, this guy must be like famous. Who is this guy? And I'm like, oh, that's just Adam. He's famous. So that's pretty nice though, right?
Yeah.
You feel that when you cross and you have all this people knowing that it's a very individual sport, but you have huge support.
Yeah.
Like your dad's pacing you, your mom's pacing you. I mean, your coach.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
And in past years, Sadie and Tyler have also paced.
And that's your brother and sister.
Yeah, my brother and sister. They're both younger. Tyler, he wasn't feeling that too well, so he actually stayed home. He wasn't there for all the festivities and that. And then once again, we didn't think Cody would like having 2 minors on the course alone for the final 9 miles. So
what they don't know doesn't hurt him. Cody doesn't care. He wouldn't know.
Yeah, probably wouldn't. But anyways.
Well, that's awesome. So what are your plans? So you're in your senior year.
Yeah.
You got, you're in the middle of cross country right now, or winding down, I guess.
Yeah. Had regions yesterday. So
and then you got track in the spring. So you had regions. How'd that go?
It was amazing. So I'm still trying to figure this out. Regions for track after the Salt Flats 50 miler, probably shouldn't have even been there because they messed up my time. So I was with all the really fast kids. I PR'd by 27 seconds. That was 6 days after the 50.
Wow.
Yesterday, I PR'd by like over 42 seconds. And it's only like 11 days after the bear. So something about running ultras and then like a week later running really fast races. I don't know, maybe just taking a break from speed work, but I'm crushing my PRs.
That's awesome.
So cross country's winding down. We've got state coming up, but yeah, that surprised me more than I would have guessed.
What are your plans after you graduate? I know you're running the bear next year.
Yeah,
what do you have plans for it after you graduate?
After graduate, do a couple of races in the summer, travel a bit with my family. After I do the Bear 100, my plan is to serve an LDS mission, so take a 2-year break, but afterwards, go to school, run some more races.
Nice.
All that good stuff.
Nice. So you're going to put in some papers before the bear.
Yeah.
Just to be prepared to go on your LDS mission after the bear. What a send-off that would be, another Bear 100. Is your mom going to jump in again next year too?
So she called herself retired after 2019 when she had DNF, and when COVID hit, she figured it was probably the best time to.
Yeah.
Then we brought her back in 2022, and the past year or so, she's like, "Oh man, I'm too old for this." I'm like, "Mom, that's BS. Like, there's 70-year-olds outpacing us. Like they've got a little age, but like with some training, anything's possible."
Yeah.
And after this last bear, like I don't think I'll convince her again.
Really?
And it's sad, but I mean, she says like she'll do like a 50 or something, but I mean, if not, she'll still pace me 50 miles or so. But
I love that.
I don't think
she's
I'll
retired. She'll still do 50.
She'll still do 50, pacing 50. Retired.
But your mom's done a lot of running and races too. I mean, we've seen your mom around a lot. She's awesome.
Yeah, this was her 9th attempt at the bear, and she's succeeded 6 times. So she's definitely had her fair share of racing.
That's amazing. And yeah, she's done a lot more than the bear too. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
So again, I'm going to ask you, so I can't imagine, I think I've had conversations with people trying to think of, I'm old, so remembering when I was 17 is tough enough, but I was a very driven soccer player at 17, but for a 17-year-old to have this, and physically, that's one thing, mentally to me is the other side, right, as we discussed earlier. So how did you do it? Is it just you made up your mind, I'm doing it, and that's it? Or did you have some other, stuff you were working through to do that? Or is it just like, I'm doing it?
I really just decided, and I'm like, well, like, what can I lose? I should just go for it, push my limits, see what I can do, see what I'm capable of. So I can't remember when I decided and when it's like, hey, let's sign up when it opens. Which is crazy how fast registration went this year. Instead of 2 days, it was 2 hours.
Yeah, opens December 1st, and they changed the qualifying, so people make sure you look at that. They changed how you can qualify for the bear, which isn't a huge thing. I mean, obviously, you're not going to have an issue with that, but
yeah,
you just signed up right away then.
Yeah, and that was before doing my prerequisite, but now you have to have done a prerequisite before you register.
Yeah.
Don't blame me. I don't know if I'm the cause of that, but
you're not. I talked to the race directors. Definitely not the cause. They've got some other reasons for it, which are solid. And it's not a bad thing as well.
It's not a bad thing. Just I'm like, oh, thank goodness it was this year instead of next year. Instead of
that would have been
before.
tough, right? Because you were planning on it like, oh, by the way, you can't run this year.
Yeah.
You'd be like, come on, guys.
Just do a 50 in October or something.
So you think your mom will pace you next year?
She definitely will.
That's awesome. And I didn't realize your dad ran either.
Yeah, so he's run a couple marathons here and there. He's never done any ultras. He's paced whatever crazy races we do.
Yeah.
But he had pneumonia back in December, so it's taken him quite a while to come back. So he's still running in that. It's just kind of been a slow recovery from that.
Sure. So what about next year with the Bear? Are you going into the Bear right now thinking of a goal, like a sub 30?
Definitely sub 30.
So now you know a little bit more of the course. Know a little bit more of how it goes.
Yeah, so I've known most of the Bear course because I've just paced different areas. The only areas that I hadn't paced yet going into this was the start to 37, which is right hand because can't have pacers there.
Yep.
And then from the lodge to, let's see, is it Beaver Creek? It's that 10-mile stretch where
Beaver Creek,
where you cross the border.
Yep.
So I hadn't done those two sections yet. So like 47 miles, but the rest of the course I'd done.
What about how did you feel on the first 37? Because the first part of the Bear, there's a lot of climbing.
Yeah, there is.
And the back end is less climbing, even though you still got climbing.
Yeah.
How did you fare? Obviously, like you mentioned, you hadn't run that section. How did you feel through there?
Felt really good. It went by pretty quick, actually, for the first 10 or 15, just because we were talking. It's the Congo line.
Yep.
So you're just chatty, just going up the mountain, enjoying the fall colors. And then once the heat kicked in, then it was a little bit slow from 20 to 35 or so. And then, well, I guess I really should say up to Tony, but when it started getting cooler outside, well, I guess it really didn't start cooling off till it was dark. But when it started getting dark, you're realizing you're almost to the halfway point, so it's just kind of pushing you to Tony.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So are you changing any fueling strategies for next year? You thinking about it?
Probably shouldn't have as many jelly beans.
What do you do for electrolyte? Do you have a drink you do too?
So we have some drinks that we have.
Okay.
We tested out Gnarly this year.
Okay.
And that actually is what made Mom throw up. Like she just didn't settle with her. She'd been drinking it, and then she filled up her pack again, and then she took a sip of that, instantly came up. So I don't know if she had too much of it, and I had other methods for her. I'm like, hey, I've got some gum that has electrolytes in it if you want to try that, and she wasn't open to it at the moment. But yeah, the tropical, is it Tropical Punch?
Yep.
Yeah.
Tropical.
That Gnarly, I love.
Nice.
I tried the Key Lime, wasn't a huge fan of it, but I love the Tropical Punch. That stuff is really good. So
that worked.
I used that for the majority of the race, and I had ice water here and there just because you want to get some water in you.
Yeah.
But that Gnarly is really good.
Nice. So do you know if is there any, you mentioned 100-milers and you don't know, but is there some that you're kind of eyeballing that you know potential ones?
There's
before the Bear, because you want to do a couple next year, right?
Yeah, I want to do a few. There's popular ones around, like there's Wasatch. I mean, lottery systems, of course, but there's Wasatch. There's the qualifiers from the Bear, Western and Hard Rock. Those will be really fun.
Yeah.
Definitely leave a footprint there as far as age records go.
Are you going to try and put in? Are you going to put in for those?
I don't know. Maybe. I think it'd be really fun, and I think that
17 Hard Rock could be fun.
But I do think I could I don't know. I think I could probably do it if I were to go for it. And I've been thinking about that over the past couple of days. I'm like, well, Hard Rock's a beast, but like the Bear, I mean, the Bear was physically and mentally challenging, but with as much energy as I had at the end, and Hard Rock, you have a lot more time, but just some of those other races, the lottery systems, I'm like, well, they're equal to the Bear or a little bit harder.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think I could push my limits a little more, but we'll just see what happens. But I do want to go for some hundreds next year.
Nice. So you're just are you gonna enjoy your last bit of your senior year of high school?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Because you can't. I mean, hundreds will be there. Make sure you enjoy your time. Because your friends are probably like, "Come on, man, let's go do something fun." You're like, "I'm running."
Yeah.
You just got to talk them into coming out and running with you.
I tried telling them to come to the finish because I'm like, hey guys, you should go up to Bear Lake. And well, because we've always talked about doing a Bear Lake trip, and I'm like, hey, didn't happen over the summer, but like LeBeau's shakes, like I guess LeBeau's was closed either way, but still had shakes at the end. So I'm like, hey, there's shakes at the finish. Come up to the finish.
Well, I like your 17-year-old raw enthusiasm, and you're definitely wise beyond your years. But if someone is listening to the podcast, you're 17, doesn't matter how old anybody is listening, but what would you say to them if they, and it's not 100 milers, there's, again, there's all distances. It's your first half marathon. It's your first trail marathon. It's your first 50. What advice would Adam give to somebody that's out there contemplating, is a half, I don't know if I'm ready for a half, it's too hard, or a marathon, or a 50 or 100? Like, what's some advice? Give us some advice.
I think you just need to make sure that you train according to whatever race you're doing. Just make sure you're training right. And it's all about the baby steps. Like for me, I just started stepping up a little bit at a time, just kind of pushing my limits a little more, and that's kind of what led me up to the Bear. So, I mean, if it's small races, just, train accordingly. Just
and take your approach.
Take my approach.
Take your approach and just say, you know what? Push your limit. I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
Nothing's going to take me off.
Just have the confidence to do it. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're slow or fast. It's all about finishing.
Yep. I agree with that 100%. I think you nailed that part for sure, just about finishing. I'll tell you what, it's been super cool to be on the outside periodically, seeing what you're doing. Like you said, 10 years old, you ran the Nordic 7K. Joel and I both remember you very well. Early years of the podcast, you were chiming in here and there, and we got
on the trails listening.
Yep. And so it's really cool. It's some surprise it's been that long, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I feel really old now, but 10 years old, just seeing you that way. And then I was super excited. I paced the Bear. I was at the finish line, and I was there with my wife. And when you came across, I was so excited. Like, it was one of the funnest finishes I've been able to see, just because of, again, obviously know you a little bit, but then your age, and then just your approach to it, I love. I mean, it's refreshing, and I love earlier what you said. Kids your age are kind of losing that edge, if you will, and it's just put your mind to it. So I think you can help your friends. Yeah. Ultimately, whether it's getting a B in math, passing driver's ed, going to work after school, whatever it is. I mean, you're what listeners out there are going, okay, humanity's not lost. We have kids like Adam out there that are bringing up that next group, saying, come on, just step up a little bit.
Yeah. But it is actually really cool, because I had a friend reach out to me about 2 weeks or so ago, and he's not a runner by any means. Like, he's more of a weightlifter, but he's like, hey, Adam, like, I've been trying and just ran 3 miles without stopping, and you're my motivation. Wanted to tell you, just wanted to be able to say that I did it. And I mean, good for him. Like, it's awesome just seeing progress and just knowing that I'm kind of the motivation. Just anyways, it's awesome.
Oh, I bet. And I'm happy for you. I think, there's this, I hope you're proud of yourself. Yeah. I hope you're very proud of what you've been able to do so far. I mean, obviously, just by, being around you, listening to you talk, I think you're definitely someone that whatever you want to do further in life, you're just going to get it done. I mean, that's super neat for us to see here on the podcast. And I know the listeners I know some are back there going, gosh, dang, this kid is killing it, and I'm struggling here. And I feel the same way, so don't worry about that. But you're inspiring, not just to like kids your own age. I think anybody, because what you did is so cool. You're healthy. Your mind is right. You're just a positive person. I'm just happy you came on the podcast.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. It's been awesome being out here.
All right. Well, I don't ever let people go with throwing some buzz questions at them. So these are like coming at you. Super easy. We'll start off easy too. So just like, what comes to your mind on these? What's your favorite trail running shoe?
Probably my Hoka Speed Goats, the 6s. I ran the Bear in those.
Oh, nice. Okay. 3, this is a tough one. 3 races you would love to do. Not now, but anytime.
Do past ones count?
Any race.
Probably the Bear, that's obviously way up there. And then Wasatch would be really fun, and then White Pine. That was a really fun one.
Nice. Favorite? Do you run with music at all?
It depends.
What's your favorite song to run to?
Probably Born for This.
Okay. Who's that?
It's by The Score.
Okay. See, I love learning new things. All right. What's the best running advice you've ever received?
There's a quote that my cross-country teacher had. It's went along the lines of, it's better to be, or let's see, it's went along the lines of just, you'd rather be physically tired for a week than regret not doing it at all. I can't remember it exactly, but
it's kind of like that thing where it's better to be, like you mentioned, tired for a while than regret it for a lifetime. Type
yeah, something
mentality.
along the lines of that. Can't remember the exact quote.
I think that's close.
Another good one is let's see. I'm not great at memorizing quotes, but another great one is, everyone is jealous of what you have. No one is jealous of how you earned it.
Yep, that's it.
I've heard that one 2 days ago, and that's really good because, I mean, just the hard work you need to put in the time and effort.
I love it. All right. Favorite part of trail running?
Ooh, probably the scenery,
Yeah.
because you can go up on high mountains, just see dozens of miles. You also see the fall colors like we did at the Bear. It's just, scenery is so pretty.
I love it. Do you have any favorite trail runners that you follow? That you like to see what they're doing and inspire maybe?
Tara Warren, she just completed the Rocky Mountain Slam.
Mm-hmm.
That's been really inspirational just because, like, those are some really hard races, but
Absolutely.
it's like, holy cow, like, that's
400s.
400s.
Yep.
Yeah, that's been really cool to just watch and see her progression throughout that.
That's awesome. All right, I'll give you one more, and that's it. Favorite aid station food, but I'm excited for this one because you like eating anything. So
yeah, I gotta say, the pizza at Tony Grove this year was so good. Like, I did not expect that at all. Like, pizza at Tony Grove, it's like, wait, they've got, and we kept on seeing pizza signs. It's like pizza in a mile, pizza in 0.5 of a mile. It's like, hey, pizza right around the corner. It's like, there's no way they're actually gonna have pizza. Like, they're gonna bring Little Caesars up here or something. But no, it's the homemade pizza. My mom makes some of the same stuff. I would have never guessed pizza.
So Trevor Fuchs and Sean were in charge of that, and they do aid stations, and they're masters of the aid station. So it doesn't surprise me. They go all out.
Yeah, Tony Grove's always our favorite. It's just such a good aid station. It's always a party. There's always great food. Just, yeah, it's a blast.
Well, you know, I'm gonna go back. I know we're wrapping up, but when you were running the race, were people asking you all the time, how old are you?
Oh, yeah, definitely. So everybody was asking that. And a couple of my favorite comments that I got, there was this one lady at, I think it was maybe Right Hand Fork. I can't remember. But there were a few people at the aid stations, just volunteers. They're like, how old are you, 17? And then one lady said, oh, my 17-year-old twins are watching Netflix right now. Or the other ones are like, man, mine's doing homework right now, and then he's going to bed in like 10 minutes, and like just.
And you're over there going, I kind of want to go to bed right now. It's getting tired.
Or during school, they're like, wait, my 16-year-old, 17-year-old son's in like history right now. It's like, yeah, I'm skipping school for this.
Yeah, skipping school.
It's awesome.
I think it's legit to skip school for that.
Yeah.
So, well, Adam, thank you so much for coming on the show. Again, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on. It's been fun watching you. I'm excited to see what else you do moving forward. I think your mindset's amazing. Like I said, you're just a positive person that we need. But yeah, thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me out. Or thanks for having me out here. It was a pleasure.
Nice. All right. Well, that was Adam Wolf, 100-mile finisher, again, 17 years old. Man, you're going to listen to this podcast a few times and crushing it. Thanks for listening. Just remember, we got our show notes on the links there. iTunes. Give us a review. Give us a rating. Share us with your friends. Reach out if you have any questions. Thanks for listening to the podcast. Adam Wolf, 17 years old, Bear 100 finisher. I'm Eric Manning. Thanks for listening to episode 333, and we're out. Thanks for listening to the Trail Manners podcast. I'd like to thank Adam Wolf for joining us today. And I also want to encourage everybody to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Trail Manners, or swing by the website at trailmanners.com. There, you can click on the donate button or check out our store page for some cool Trail Manners swag. and both donations and purchases sure help the show. You can always hit us up on the contact page or email me at trailmanners@gmail.com and let me know what you'd like to see, who you want to hear, or if you would like to be on the show. And don't forget to share us with your friends, and if you could take just a moment to subscribe to the show, and please leave us a rating or review on iTunes or Facebook. I sure would appreciate that. And don't worry, all these links will be in the show notes. Until next time, this is Eric Manning still reminding you, you don't get what you wish for, you get what you work for. Now go get it.